Welcome, everyone, and welcome to our session, Creating Impact with LinkedIn. Thank you so much to Students for Canada for giving me the opportunity to do a quick high-level review with you on your chance to create impact with LinkedIn. Before we start, this presentation really is intended to give you some key pointers as you think about navigating your online presence for your professional endeavors, whether it's work or volunteer. So if there's questions, I understand we'll have time for questions afterwards, so I'm happy to answer any of them. I work with many people who are in career transition or just in career planning mode. So just so you know, I've been doing that off and on for the last 20 years or so too. So please pick my brain. I'm happy for you to do that. So let's dive in. So that's a bit about me and Upward HR. Really, I'm about creating connection and a sense of belonging with the clients that I work with. And for us today, I want to create a connection and a sense of belonging with you as a group as you think about how I'm going to present myself, or if you're already presenting yourself on LinkedIn, how you might be able to enhance what you already have. It's super important. And so here's our quick high-level overview of what we'll cover today. I'm assuming most of you have had exposure to LinkedIn, but if you haven't, we're going to do some basics here, and we're going to talk about why it's so important, especially in the last number of months, probably the last 15 months since we've been in the pandemic, how important it is to have a good, strong virtual presence. We're then going to talk about some key elements, and I'm looking at the bottom left-hand side of the presentation. We're going to talk about some key elements that you'll see in a LinkedIn profile and things that you can have or add to. And then we're going to talk about some tips for getting noticed when you're starting out, and then open it up for questions. So I hope that works for everyone today. So let's start with, why is LinkedIn so important? It's a critical job search and career planning tool. And these are some stats pulled right from LinkedIn. Job seekers with a comprehensive LinkedIn profile have a 71% higher chance of getting a job interview. And I will share that with you anecdotally. Over the last 6 or 8 months, working with folks who are in career transition, they may have more experience or be mid-career, but they've had a lot of recruiters reached out to them via LinkedIn, more so than I would say even last year or the year before. And so LinkedIn is a powerful tool. So having a footprint, a presence there is really important. The other stat I want to share with you is that the number of remote job postings on LinkedIn increased by 6 times during the pandemic. So how we work and how you may even interview or engage with a new employer is likely going to have some sort of remote aspect. So don't be surprised if you see more jobs for that could be done here in Calgary or wherever you're situated that are located somewhere else. The world of work is changing, and as Jacob Morgan talks about, one of his 5 factors about how the world is changing, remote and distance working is one of those factors. So being available and being able to be seen on LinkedIn in a professional way is super important. So we're going to talk now about some key LinkedIn elements. Because we don't have lots of time, I didn't pull up, I'm not going to toggle between this presentation and online, but if we have time at the end, if there's questions, I'll pull up my profile, which I have already, and we can go through that if we need to. So let's talk about some key LinkedIn elements, and I hope everyone can see and hear me okay. So the first and probably most important thing that a recruiter is going to see, or someone who's looking at connecting with you or networking with you, is your profile. And I'm not sure how many of you are on LinkedIn or have a profile statement, but it's really important that you have a profile. And so before you start, you want to go to the privacy and settings section, and it's just to the right of your profile. where you can click turn it on and off. So if you want to do some updates, add education, change your picture, you don't have to notify everybody that you're doing that. You can turn that off, make all your changes, and then turn it back on so people will see the changes without being notified that it. Unless you want them to know you've accomplished and you've achieved something, or you've got a new job or something where you want people to know that. Okay. The second piece is a headline, and I'll show you a screenshot here in a minute. A headline that you want to start with, a headline that's relevant to the industry that you're targeting or that you're already a part of. And so that headline, even if it's not a job title itself, maybe your computer programmer, as it, for example, you can use that as a headline. A lot of times people use the job title from their most recent job, but let's say you're not sure about where that is. Maybe you're human resources, like myself, and you might want to use categories like talent management, recruitment, and maybe something like compensation. You could use those as your headline. And the reason I say that is because the algorithm in LinkedIn will pick up on those keywords. So you want to make sure that those something in your headline speaks to the industry you're targeting or what you're doing. Now, profile pictures, when I work with people who are in transition, I always say to them, it should look professional. It doesn't have to be a suit and tie or a dress suit, but it should look at a minimum business casual. So that means not on a boat with your sunglasses or hiking a mountain or even wearing a wedding dress, which I had to let someone know. Beautiful picture. But again, this is very much focused on your professional presentation out to the world. A recruiter may look up your LinkedIn before they even read the rest of your resume. So make sure that it's a headshot. We all have great smartphones. You can even use your smartphone to take a picture in your house against a plain wall with a nice dress shirt, top, whatever, and that's sufficient. It doesn't need to be fancy or professional. It just needs to look like you, and so people can recognize you, particularly if you have a common name. Like John Smith, and there might be hundreds and hundreds. So they want to know which one it is. Okay. The more practical piece is you're 14 times more likely to be found on LinkedIn if you have a headshot. Your URL, which is your unique LinkedIn address, you can customize that on your public profile. You want to actually copy that link into the top of your resume. So by the way, on your resume, we don't need to see your address anymore. We just need to see your cell number with a professional message, how you've reached John Smith, your Gmail or your personal email, and then your LinkedIn link. And you can customize it so it doesn't have all those A, B, C, D, E, F, G after your name. You simply can go on, click on it, and delete those. So that's a custom URL just for you. And then your contact info, your email address that will be seen. So on your profile, which I'll show you on the next slide, you want to make sure that that's an email that stays with you. In the past, people would have used a work-related email, but because people move and change employers often, then you have to log in. You might lose access. You might want to use your Gmail, Hotmail, whatever works for you, personal email that always stays with you. And then on your profile, there's a summary. You want to personalize it and show the value that you bring. What do you want someone who's looking at your profile to know about you? So let's take a look. Here's a sample LinkedIn profile. This gentleman has his particular position here. If you don't have a position, you can say, I'm a software engineer or human resources, the function or the area that you're interested in. And notice how he's got a detailed profile underneath. And you can have some fun with this, but really it's about sharing who you are and what skills you actually have. And the more personalized you can make it, the better. It doesn't have to be a story so much as just saying who you are, what you're really good at or looking for, and what you are available to do. Okay. Notice here that where we talked about see the contact info, you want to add your email address there. And then in the body, the details, note the details about why and his key skills. So he says, throughout middle school and high school, I latched on to any ideas for projects he could get um, talking about sort of games and projects that he liked, where he learned C, C++, and he was devouring it because he loves software development. So you can personalize it as long as it's directed towards sort of a professional outcome. And the last thing I would share with you on this page is that you want to use some keywords for the LinkedIn logarithm. So, he's got his specialties here. So if there's any areas that you have expertise in, whether it's project, it could even be from your volunteer experience if you don't have a lot of work-related experience, but you want to talk about what are the key skills that you want to be sought out for by a recruiter. So in this case, he's got his languages, but also academic. He's talked about system programming and distributed systems, something that's meaningful to a recruiter that's looking for him, but also sharing with anyone, this is what I like to do and what I'm looking for. So that is the profile section. That's the very top. And know that when a recruiter looks at LinkedIn, they're primarily looking at your picture, what are the keywords underneath, and the profile. So don't be afraid to have a longer profile as long as you include keywords or highlight what you're looking for in that specific section. So let's move on to the section below that, which is experience. Your experience really should highlight any duties or accomplishments that you have, okay? And it doesn't matter if you have a lot of experience or a little, as long as it's easy for a recruiter to look at, particularly that very first position, your most recent in experience, they can look at it and see, I understand what this person did or why they were in that role, okay? And also what value you brought to that role. This is the area of your resume or of your online profile that helps build trust, okay? Now, in this section, I understand this is a bit of a wordy slide, but there's a point that I want to highlight with you. Some people ask, well, how much detail should I put in my LinkedIn experience? Should be the same as my resume? And actually, we want something that's a bit more condensed. So in the sample experience section that we're looking at, on the left-hand side, you'll see sort of what we call typical bullets from a resume. This person happens to be a bit more senior, a director of sales. They talk about leading a team, managing risk, achieving sales, and then building relationships, all with results that we've highlighted here. Now, on the LinkedIn profile, we want to condense that. So notice how we have 4 bullets on the left. On the right-hand side, and it doesn't matter if you don't have big numbers and so on, percentages, it's really just highlighting any key result that you feel you want to share. So in this case, we went from leading the team, managing, achieving, and built on the left-hand side over to led a team and combining some of those key elements where we've got the 50 plus clients, increase that revenue by 150% and the team performance by 33%. So do you see the difference? Your LinkedIn work experience section doesn't need to be as detailed as your resume, but it should highlight things that you're proud of, that you want to talk about. And don't underestimate, if you don't have numbers and percentages, that's okay. You can talk about doing something accurately, efficiently, consistently, or with attention to detail. These are all really good results that are, if they're relevant for you, don't be afraid to include those, because they build trust and give the reader a little bit more information about what you've accomplished. Okay. The next section that we're going to talk about is the volunteer and education section. And all I would say here is that if you volunteer, go ahead and add it. It's well regarded professionally, especially if it's connected to the kind of work that you're looking for or the kind of work you're pursuing with your education. Obviously, put in your education if it's in progress. You don't need to put in the dates, but you want to put in your education, whatever you've completed or your work words, okay? And below that, there's a section on skills and expertise. And these are those, and I'll show you on the next slide. These are where where a recruiter and the algorithm are going to type in the keywords. So if I'm looking for someone like who's got distributed systems, our previous example, or it's human resources, you've got that as a drop down in your skills and expertise section. that's how you're going to pop up. So have fun. You have, I think, up to 50 choices. You type in and there's drop downs that pop up in LinkedIn. So go ahead and populate as much as you can. That makes sense. And even try out words and see if they pop up. LinkedIn will give you examples, but you can also create your own. And you can choose to be endorsed or not. And I think you can still order your skills by clicking and dragging them. At this point, it's not important to have them ranked. It's just important that they're there, okay? And you can always go back and add more as you think of them. Okay. All right, so let's go back here. So this is a slide with the sample volunteer experience. It's okay to just list it with the dates and so on, but if you can personalize it or highlight the results or the mission, it just adds a little bit extra. So sometimes people just put volunteer night strike, you know, and what it is, but this person says, I work with a team of wonderful, caring volunteers in providing food, company, and support to this Portland's homeless community. And so it's one sentence, but it gives a sense of who you are and personalizes it. So if you have this volunteer experience that you want to include, you can highlight what the mission of it is or what you've done specifically there for it, okay? That's not a problem at all. And I would encourage you. And if you don't have it, that's not a big deal. But if you do, especially when you're starting out, it's great to include. And I'm not sure, I'm seeing some questions come up. So are we going to have an opportunity to address the questions at the end?
Yeah, we can do them at the end if that's what you're most comfortable with.
Okay, yeah, I just didn't want to toggle back and forth. But I want to make sure that people don't think I'm ignoring them.
No, it's all good. Well, I think some of these might be answered along the way, but we'll get to them at the end.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. All right. So in addition to those other elements that we've talked about, your profile, your experience, a volunteer, any skills or expertise areas, some sample areas that you can add also are specifically accomplishments. And earlier I said in your experience, you can put your work accomplishments, but if there are anything else, maybe it's a capstone piece that you've done through your program at school, or maybe it's a project that you were on and you completed it and had a really successful result with it. Under accomplishments, you could put their courses. If you have any honors or awards, maybe you received scholarship in high school or for your first or second or third year university. It's a great thing, a great place to highlight that your track record of achievement and things that you're proud of. Maybe it's a community-based volunteer award, something that just shows the kind of contribution that you're able to make right now. That's a great place to put it. Or if you've been on an honors list or anything like that. And then below, if you want to get specific, if there's key projects, either at a work project or something you've done volunteer in your school work, certainly you're welcome to include it there. And something that I want to highlight to all of you is languages. The reason why each one of us, doesn't matter if English is our only language, include the language section, because what it does is it elevates your profile in the LinkedIn algorithm. So on my profile, I only have English because that's what I speak fluently and write fluently. But for those of you who English is a second language, or you've learned other languages, you're bilingual with French, or you have some other language that you speak, include them. Because what it does is it allows recruiters to see your profile higher up in their pile, so to speak, if you can visualize it, because it's a more complete profile. The more things that you can add into your LinkedIn profile, the more efficiently the algorithm and a recruiter using the algorithm will find you. Okay, so remember to add key courses, honors, projects, certifications, and even your languages, even if it's only English. Make sure that you can add that as well. Okay, we're almost finished with this section. But in terms of recommendations, if you've given a recommendation, it will show. You can also request recommendations right directly from the LinkedIn app on your phone or when you're in LinkedIn on your laptop or computer at home. If you're going to ask for a recommendation, make sure that you give the person you're asking the recommendation from some kind of clue about what you want them to say about you. Okay, and I know that might seem a little weird, but you want it tailored so that it highlights that you're a great worker, or that you have excellent collaboration skills. Or when I worked with Pauline, she was very diligent and cooperative and was made our project go really smoothly. You can guide them to say the kind of things that are going to help you stand out a bit more. Okay, and feel free, if you ask for them, always offer to give them as well as a courtesy. People like that. And then one thing you can do, particularly when you're starting out, is to show the recruiter or other people you're networking with interest, especially when we don't have a lot of work experience. One of the things that's going to help you connect with others and as a sort of a softer way of networking is to join groups online, right? So maybe it's YYC Oil and Gas, or the Calgary Human Resources group, or whatever the group is that is tied to the thing that you're looking for. Make sure that you join some groups. Online for networking, they often put on webinars and things where you can become visible, especially if you're in search mode. And they're also great for information sharing and for staying connected to trends and what's happening from a professional interest perspective, okay? So definitely join as many groups as you wish. And you can also follow companies that you're targeting. So let's say there's a specific computer software engineering company you're following, or maybe it's in petroleum or whatever the industry you're pursuing. You want to start following those big companies or groups that are associated with that industry. Or it could be influencers. You know, some people follow Richard Branson, Arianna Huffington, famous entrepreneurs that you might be interested in as an example. There are a multitude of organizations that you can follow either for professional interest or because you enjoy reading and commenting on the things that they're posting. Okay, so finally, some tips to get noticed. Before we open it up for questions, there are a couple of slides left here. If you're just starting out in your career, or even if you've been working for a little while and you're thinking about making a next move, you want to have, from a baseline, 50 plus connections. When I work with people who are mid-career and more seasoned, that number is about 500. And it doesn't take long, believe it or not, to get quite a few hundred people that you're connected with. This is really your business card Rolodex, if any of you remember that. This is where all your contacts, no matter what role that you go into, what organization you go into, this is where you're going to maintain your contacts and your relationships. So start adding your colleagues, friends, people that you can connect with in a professional sense. This is not necessarily Facebook by any stretch, but people that colleagues, coworkers, classmates, start adding them, because 50 plus is sort of when you're going to start to be found, okay, from an algorithm perspective. And if you decide to sign up for the paid version, I believe Open to Work, you'll see, if you go online, you'll see a green circle around people's profile that says Open to Work. You can sign up for that, or you can turn on a switch that says you're open for work without paying for it. So that's when you can play with. But this is where recruiters can find you. They'll still find you otherwise, but it will just enhance sort of their visibility to you. The third thing you can do, especially if your preference is introversion and you're not dialing people up or reaching out to them to make connections, share articles. Maybe there's a great article on something professionally that you're very interested in. You can share or even just comment on an article that's come up in your feed and say, and give a shout out by using the @ sign to the person who posted it to say, thank you for sharing. This is really relevant or timely, or whatever comments you have, because it shows interest in your field. It shows that you're engaged, and it also creates more visibility for you in a softer way. Last two things, in terms of your experience, list all relevant part-time unpaid or internship work if you can, if it makes sense for you to do it. Each person will have to make that decision, but list your experience. And then finally, show off. Sometimes we forget or we think, well, I'm just starting out, or I don't have a lot of experience, or I have a lot and I'm not sure what to put forward. Add examples of your work, your writing, maybe it's a blog post, something that's professional, a video, maybe you're a marketing person and you've done a community volunteer video that you got great reviews on. You can attach media. On my profile, I've attached pictures of me at events or things that were a podcast I was on. That's nice for people to have social proof of how bright and amazing you are. So the last thing is, LinkedIn is really amazing in terms of the type of information and support that you can get. So LinkedIn.com, if you notice here, it's the help function. Any of the things that I've mentioned to you today, you can type in the how can I help bar there and they'll come up. Maybe you've created 2 profiles and you're like, oh, I need to merge them. It's not looking right. There's even help for stuff like that. So really robust help page here that will guide you through most of the things that we've talked about today.
Sorry, what do what connections you have make a difference? For example, I have a lot of political connections, yet I'm not in a political business anymore. Will that affect me getting hired?
Not necessarily. I think it's more of the content and what you comment on. And so the key things that someone who's, especially if we're talking about a recruiter or someone who's looking to recruit you, it's going to be in that profile. I've worked with clients who've transitioned out of politics, and it is, I won't say it's not a challenge, but it doesn't really matter that you're connected. People will react. People are people, right? If they don't agree with the politician or not. But I don't think that it makes a lot of difference. Oftentimes, because of those political connections, you'll have a lot of opportunity to expand your network because they tend to be in the business of having big networks, right? So I don't think it makes a difference, but I do think you want to always focus on or comment on or tailor your profile to what it is you're looking at or working on right now. I hope that helps.
Oh, most definitely. I think a question that we were asked in the comments is, do you think that LinkedIn Premium is worth it for somebody on the job hunt?
I would say you don't need it. I always advise my folks who are in career transition, it's not required. I think it used to be $30 or $33 a month. It doesn't really give you a lot extra other than you can see who's checked you out or things like that. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend or not recommend it, but I would say to you, it doesn't, if you're only using the free version, you're just fine for now. LinkedIn will probably over time lock down, I think, more how much free posting we can do and free webinars and things we can do on there. But right now, the free version is very, very sufficient for people in search mode for sure.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So okay, you already talked about the wedding photo. Somebody has asked, what are some more like no-goes that you see on LinkedIn profiles?
I think the thing to remember, and it would the one that stands out to me is to remember this is a professional networking place. This is like going into a room and networking professionally. It's your kind of business card holder. So everything that you put on there should be focused either on your interest professionally, your career interest professionally. Maybe you're commenting or congratulating a coworker or a student or a colleague. It shouldn't become business Facebook. And when I say by business Facebook, sharing personal stuff, I've seen a lot of that during the pandemic. And to be fair, some people, that's what they do. But I think as you're starting out, particularly because if you're earlier on in your career, you want to be taken seriously. That doesn't mean you don't have a personality, but everything is directed towards professionalism. Even something simple like I talked about the profile picture, we don't want to see you on a boat or climbing Heart Mountain on a Saturday with your sunglasses on. We want to see, unless that's your personal business, right? If you're a mountain guide, then that makes sense. But if you're looking for a job in human resources, you want to just have a plain professional picture. You can express your personality through Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. There are other avenues for that. So that would be the one that stands out to me the most. And in terms of, the question around politics, I've seen also a lot of political opinions shared. My personal advice would be that's not something I would suggest. But again, it's something that if you're passionate about and it makes sense for you, you'll have to make that call.
So bridging from that, I know that I and quite a few people that I know have been in an experience where we've career transitioned from very different careers. So whether it's training in restaurants to working in corporate, how do you bridge that experience when you're writing your profile?
I think the two things that are very helpful is to put in that profile you're seeking, right? So you could, let's say you're a engineer in training, or you're an architect in training, right? You can even have some fun with it, or talk about just the area that you're interested in, even if you don't have a job title. So let's say you've been a server in hospitality for all through your school. Now you're ready to get to that professional position. You want to target where it is. Keep it general, but say if it's in marketing and sales, put marketing and sales under there, so at least the algorithm can find you. Then your experience, you want to just highlight what it is that you've done, any accomplishments. So in a serving role, let's say it's about fast and efficient service, recognized for quality, consistent quality and customer satisfaction. Those could be key accomplishments. And then below, you want to put those key skill sets. Customer service, cash management, whatever it is that you did in that serving role as key skills underneath. And then you just keep adding them. And also anything you learned in school as skills as well. Microsoft Word, Excel, Power, whatever, that kind of stuff. That's how you start, because you have to start somewhere, right? And I want you all to embrace it, because it's where you're at.
For sure. It comes to that old saying of like dressing for the job you want, not the job you have. And so just kind of
Right.
your opportunity to do it like online.
Yeah, and also get involved in those groups, even if you're just following them, and then articles. Comment and share articles that show that that's where you want to be. That's a great way, because it shows up in your feed that you've liked or shared that. That's another way that people go, oh, this person is ready now for their career, or they're really interested,
Definitely.
right? And it shows a little bit also about your personality too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then we do have another question on the note of transitioning from one to another. Somebody's asking, is it weird to ask a previous boss for a recommendation?
Not at all. That's fantastic if you can. It's far more impactful, honestly, than I know some people still do reference letters. As an HR person, I can't talk to an HR reference letter. I will want to talk to your reference. But if it's on your LinkedIn and I can already see that person has said, if they're comfortable and if their company allows for that, it's so powerful. So if you feel comfortable, it's not at all weird. Again, make sure that they're going to give you a good recommendation, and you can even say, what I'm thinking about asking you to say is X. Are you comfortable with that? And they might say, write it, send it to me, and I'll put it in there for you. It's wonderful. So if you can do it, it definitely is an excellent idea.
Well, thank you so much. I know another attendee just asked if there's a time limit on when an award received becomes kind of redundant. So if you've graduated high school 10 years ago, but you received a leadership scholarship or a full ride scholarship, should you include that still?
I think you can. It becomes less relevant to the recruiter because it is so long ago. When we are looking at resumes, we're looking at the last 10 to 15 years max. But on LinkedIn, the difference is it shows sort of a consistent history of achievement. So in that accomplishment section where it says awards, I don't think it would be a bad thing to put in there. You're going to make a call at what time you want to take it off or not. But honestly, because it's farther down in your profile, I don't think it hurts you to put it in there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Somebody else is asking, like in terms of connecting with people on LinkedIn, what should you write in the comments when you send a connection request?
Oh, fabulous question. Um, when you're approaching, and it really depends on if you know the person or you don't know the person. If you don't know the person, you want to state, hi, so and so, and you always want to use, don't go, hey, you want to be, I've received some of those, hey, Pauline, I saw your profile. Not cool, especially if I don't know you. So if you don't know the person, you want to be as professional as possible. Hi, Pauline. It was a pleasure seeing you on this webinar, or I noticed your profile and that we share mutual connection. I'm growing my network and I'd like to add you to my professional network. Or you could even get more bold and say, as I'm starting my career, I'm reaching out to seasoned professionals for advice and guidance. If you're interested in connecting, I'd love to take 15 minutes to ask you 3 or 4 key career questions. That is powerful because it's direct, it's focused, and it shows some initiative. Now, if you're not comfortable, maybe you're a bit more introverted and you're not feeling good about that, it's okay. Just make sure that's professional. If it's someone you know, then you say, hey, I'm refreshing as I'm getting ready for my search for the summer, I'm refreshing my LinkedIn contacts. I'd like to add you to my professional network. Always say, and by the way, that first example, you could also say, we are not currently acquainted. We don't know each other if you don't have any mutual connection. But if you have a mutual connection, you may want to say, I noticed we're mutually connected by so and so. Just warm that contact up. But those are some ways that you can do an intro. You can Google lots of LinkedIn intros if you're wanting a little bit of a template as well.
Now, one thing that I've noticed, I've only had my LinkedIn for about 1.5 years, but one thing that I noticed through fundraising or through things like that is that a lot of people add you on LinkedIn immediately after receiving a business card. Is that okay? So okay, perfect.
Yeah, and sometimes there's a functionality, those are they called QR codes? People were scanning each other's QR codes and then the person pops up, or you can airdrop somebody if you've got an iPhone, I think. But if you get an old school business card, absolutely, you can add them. And that's a great excuse actually to, when you reach out to them, say, it was great to connect and we exchanged business cards. I thought I'd add you to my LinkedIn. That way it's a little smoother. And again, it's only 1 or 2 sentences that you have to say. And this LinkedIn becomes your business card sort of Outlook contacts that will always follow you, right? I would suggest anyone that you meet professionally, you add them to your LinkedIn so that you can stay connected, because we tend to change jobs, and folks who are, Gen Z or even millennial will probably change jobs every 3 years or less. So you want to make sure that your contacts are in one place all the time that follow you, which is LinkedIn. These are great questions.
Thank you. Yeah, our audience is really on a roll today. So thanks, everybody. Keep them coming in case you have more. We have another person asking, if your volunteer experience is relevant to your career path, should you put it separately in the volunteering section, or can you put it in your work experience section?
I would put it in the volunteer section, primarily because we want to make the distinction between paid and unpaid. Now, is that a hard and fast rule? No. It's something to think about. Maybe it's the only experience you have. If you're going to put it in your experience, you have to put that it was volunteer. Okay. I would recommend you put it in your volunteer experience. If that's all you have coming out of school, maybe you haven't had employment, or you have something you don't want to put there, you could put it in your experience and then put volunteer. So you have 2 options. If you have relevant work experience, then I would pop it down into volunteer. If not, then maybe that's the place where it makes sense to have the most exposure. The other part of that is, if you have volunteer experience where you've got some good accomplishments, maybe you coordinated all of the food gathering at your local church or whatever it is, then you would want to put those accomplishments in there if it's in the experience section, for sure.
Well, thank you very, very much. We have no more questions in the Q&A, but I just wanted to truly thank you. You answered a lot of questions that I've had over the last year or so as well.
Yeah, I have the pleasure of working with so many people who are looking to make their next move or transitioning. And so It's always fun. This was fun for me, and I'm happy to connect with any of you. I see there's probably 15 or 16, oh no, 20 plus. Feel free to use me as a contact. I have well over 500 connections, and happy to add me to your LinkedIn. It's always good to have an HR person in your world. I don't do a lot of recruiting, but certainly it's great to expand your network. So please feel free after this to send me an invite request. And I wish you tons of luck over the summer, whatever you end up doing.